It's October 2024 and I'm in a branch of fashion retailer H&M that also includes a 2,000-year-old Roman stadium, and that's only going back a quarter of Plovdiv's 8,000-year history. Situated on the wide alluvial plains of the Marista River and dominated by the now 6, up until the early 20th century 7, syenite hills that have for millennia seen this place as a melting pot of empires, the city of Plovdiv is recognised as the longest continuously inhabited city in Europe and one of the longest globally, with confirmed inhabitation back to at least 6,000 years BCE. From the earliest settlers through the Idrisian kingdom, the Macedonians under both Philip and his son Alexander the Great, the Romans, the Byzantines, Bulgarians, Ottomans, and even a period as the capital of the short-lived nation of Eastern Rumelia before a final reunification of the rest of the kingdom of Bulgaria in 1885, the marks of almost every major empire that existed on the eastern side of Europe are here, though for once the city managed to avoid the inbred hands of the Habsburgs. The city is dominated by those hills, made from syenite, a coarse-grained intrusive igneous rock which has a similar composition to granite, thus making it very hard-wearing rock and ideal for creating paving. In fact, that's what was the fate of the 7th of Plovdiv's hills, quarried away during the early years of the 20th century to pave the city and further afield. Today, from the brow of Jambaz Tepe, one of the 3 hills that make up the Old Town, you can look across the modern city centre to the peaks of the other 3 surviving hills, and in the distance you can just make out the modern shopping mall that now occupies the site of their long-since quarried sibling. Sahat Tepe, officially called Danov Hill, but also colloquially the Clock Tower Hill, with its original Ottoman clock tower still sounding throughout the day, is the only location in the city where it's possible to see the top of all of the 6 hills at once. Nebet, Jambaz and Taksim Hills forming the old town of Plovdiv, with the impressive ancient theatre sitting in the saddle between Jambaz and Taksim Hills, and on the top of Nebet Hill, the ancient ruins of the first settlements in the city some 8,000 years ago. Across the top of the hill, past the clock tower, and looking towards Muradetsky Hill, the highest of the city's peaks, and Bunadik, topped with its statue to the Soviet army. The statue on Bunadik isn't the only distinctly Soviet sculpture in the city. Down close to the Archaeological Museum is Unification Square and the 1985 built Monument of Unification, constructed to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the unification of Eastern Rumelia and the rest of Bulgaria in 1885. Eastern Rumelia, with its capital in Plovdiv, was created as an autonomous province of the Ottoman Empire as part of the Treaty of Berlin that followed the victory of Russia in the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878. After a bloodless revolution on the 6th of September 1885, the province was annexed by the Principality of Bulgaria, which was also technically another province of the Ottoman Empire, but was in practice, since the Treaty of Berlin, an independent state. The official independence of the Kingdom of Bulgaria didn't happen until 1908, but the unification into an effectively independent Bulgaria returned the country from divisions that had started with the fall of the Bulgarian Empire in 1396. Opposite the monument is the Regional Archaeological Museum, home to just a small amount of the historic finds from the city and surrounding area. Officially opened to the public in 1882 in smaller premises when it was still Eastern Rumelia, the museum is one of the oldest cultural institutions in Bulgaria and was created in part as a reaction to the area's liberation from the Ottoman Empire and as a way of celebrating the unique history of the region. The building it's housed in today was originally constructed for the Regional Assembly of Eastern Rumelia, but given the speed with which the country was subsumed into Bulgaria, it never took up that role, and in 1886 permission was granted for the museum to relocate into the building. Renovation and construction works took place between 2006 and 2010 to create the building that exists today and charts the archaeological history of the Plovdiv region from those very earliest of settlers some 8,000 years ago through the various tribes and empires that ruled the area. There is a particular focus on the Roman period which had the greatest, and still the most visible, impact on the city, with significant finds from the various Roman sites from across the city of Philippopolis, including funerary monuments and some pretty impressive mosaics. The old town of Plovdiv, located across the top of Nebet, Jambaz and Taksim hills, is home to the earliest settlements. Unfortunately, at the time of visiting, the whole area at the top of Nebet Hill, where much of the archaeological remains from the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age is located, was closed for major multi-year restoration and consolidation works, meaning you're stuck with just the Roman remains, as well as the many historic houses that were constructed in this part of the city in the first part of the 19th century by wealthy merchants. The Balabanova House was constructed for the merchant and member of the Kaftan Guild Haj Panyot Lamsha in the middle of the 19th century, though the building takes its name for its last owner, Luka Balabanova. The original house was actually demolished in the 1930s, but in 1971 a complete restoration of the house was undertaken, leading to the buildings that exist today, and in places interior furnishings and carpetings are very much of the 1970s. Today, the raised ground floor houses a small gallery of paintings and sculptures, whilst the upper floor is laid out as a large open space with a number of small rooms opening off of it. The main space on the upper floor is used as a cultural centre for small theatre productions and concerts. Just behind the Balabanova House, and linked to it by a covered stairway, is the Hindliyan House. The house was originally built in 1848 for merchant and wholesaler Stefan Hindliyan as a dowry for his daughter, who married an Armenian merchant from Chisinau in modern-day Moldova. In 1915, at the beginning of the Armenian genocide, the family left the house and provided it as a refuge for fleeing Armenian refugees. In 1974, the house was declared a cultural monument and restored back to how it would have looked in the middle of the 19th century. The house is now one of only a handful of surviving symmetrical Plovdiv houses preserved in its original form. The house is also home to the only preserved bath with running hot and cold water out of all the historic houses in the Old Town. While some of the historic houses have been restored to how they would have looked at the height of their use as family homes, others have been put to use as museums or galleries, with the Pharmacy Museum of Hippocrates being one example of this. And the neighbouring house of Dr. Stoyan Chomakov, a surgeon and politician, which has been turned into a gallery dedicated to the local-born artist Zlatyu Boyadzhiev. Born in 1903 in the nearby village of Brezovo, he started to paint whilst he was attending business school, and on graduating, rather than going into trade or accounting, he took up painting full-time, moving in with friends into a small studio and studying at the Art Academy in Sofia. The largest and most impressive of the old houses in Plovdiv, the Balabanova House, built in 1847, close to the old city walls and the Hisar Gate into the old town, is now the regional Ethnographic Museum. Down by the side of the Ethnographic Museum is one of the last remaining sections of the old town walls that used to protect this part of the city, and with it the last surviving gate of the old town, the Hisar Gate. The current configuration of the gate dates to sometime between the 11th and 13th centuries, but its foundations go back to the Roman era. The gate was just one of 3 entrances into the ancient city of Philippopolis. Originally constructed around the 2nd century, the fortifications of the city were strengthened in the 6th century during the time of Byzantine Emperor Justinian. The walls lost their significance after the arrival of the Ottoman Empire in the city, and in later days the walls were used as the foundations for many of the Renaissance houses built up in the old town. A few metres from the Hisar Gate are another small section of that original Roman wall, albeit here with a later addition of a Byzantine-era round tower. But the largest of the Roman remains, the city of Philippopolis, named for Philip II of Macedon, who decided to rename the existing settlement after he conquered it in 342 BC, is the ancient theatre. Constructed sometime in the 1st century AD, the theatre was built to house between 5,000 and 7,000 spectators. Taking advantage of the natural topography of the landscape, the theatre sits in the saddle between Taksim and Jambaz hills, requiring very little construction to support the structure. This may well be part of the reason why it has survived so well. Today, the theatre is considered to be one of the best preserved Roman theatres in the world. The viewing points for the theatre are oriented to the south, towards the ancient city, the lowlands, and in the distance, the mountains. The theatre is a semicircle with an outer diameter of 82 metres, and inside there are 28 concentric rows of marble seats set around the stage, which is shaped like a horseshoe and has a diameter of 26.64 metres. At the end of the 4th century, a large part of the theatre was destroyed, possibly by fire or earthquake, and was further damaged in the 5th century during attacks on the city by Attila the Hun. Following that, the theatre was abandoned and forgotten about for 1,500 years, as it slowly disappeared under soil, debris and plant growth, until a landslip in the 1970s revealed the structure once again, and work quickly got underway to excavate, investigate and restore the theatre. Today, the theatre has been restored both to how it would have looked and to its function, acting as a stage for concerts, plays and public events, helped by the excellent acoustics of the space. Unlike in Roman times, today the theatre can only accommodate up to 3,500 spectators. Located down in the lower town of ancient Philippopolis and built about 100 years after the theatre during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, is the stadium. The original stadium was around 250 metres long and 50 metres wide, able to seat up to 30,000 spectators over 14 tiered rows of seating that ran the entire length of the structure. The length of the track would have been one stadion, 625 Roman feet, 600 Greek feet, 590 imperial feet, or 180 metres. As with the theatre, the stadium was lost to time and only uncovered during excavation works on what was by now the main shopping street of Plovdiv in 1923. Unlike the theatre, it's not been possible to excavate more of the stadium, as doing so would require the demolition of most of the central street of Plovdiv, home to many of the city's shops, though the layout of the stadium is marked in stones on the pavement. At some point in the 4th century, an aqueduct was placed next to the rear of the stadium, and the arch supports of this have also been uncovered in the subsequent excavations that have continued over the last 100 years. Of course, if you know you've got an ancient Roman stadium buried underneath your city, then when the opportunity arrives to reveal more of it, it would make sense to do so. This is the case when the construction of a new store for fashion retailer H&M. The original building on the site was gutted back to the surrounding walls, and archaeological excavations revealed another section of the seating from the eastern side of the stadium, as well as part of the stadium floor and the vaulting and supporting structure for the seating. The basement area is preserved and is open to explore, whilst up above the layout of the store has been set so that from most floors you can look down into the stadium. It means you can stand next to athleisure wear and look down on the point where 1800 years ago actual athletics took place. The ruins are so well preserved that there's even still traces of the Roman service pipes. It's pretty much certain that if you dig anywhere in Plovdiv, you're going to hit Roman pretty soon, and in 1971 that proved to be the case when construction works on the new central post office came across what turned out to be the Forum of Philippopolis. It's estimated that the Forum covers an area of 49 acres, with 27 acres having been excavated. This would make it the largest Roman forum in Bulgaria. The Forum would have become the heart of a Roman settlement, which was relocated down onto the flatter lands below the hills during the reign of Vespasian in the 1st century AD. The new lower town, looked down on from the theatre, would have been laid out in the standard Roman urban block system, with the Forum the focal point of the city. Off to one side of the Forum, and discovered in further excavation works in 1988, is the Odeon. This is the house of the City Council of Citizens and built around the same time as the stadium, after the bulk of the construction for the rest of the Forum had already been completed. Very few Roman cities had an Odeon, which attests to the importance of Philippopolis as a cultural and political centre of the region. With the Roman Empire split into two and its western half slowly collapsing, the Byzantine Empire that Philippopolis found itself in continued to operate smoothly, and as it pivoted towards Christianity, the major construction shifted towards religious buildings. The Great Basilica, or Bishop's Basilica of Philippopolis, was constructed around the middle of the 4th century, possibly over an earlier building with a similar floor plan. Its dimensions are extremely large for the period, with an overall length of 86.3 metres and a width of 38.5 metres, making it one of the largest early Christian churches in the Balkans. At some point, the building was abandoned and demolished, possibly as a result of another earthquake, but the demolition covered the floors, preserving the intricate mosaics that had covered most of the floor of the building. Around 22,000 square foot of the floor is covered with mosaic. The most famous of the mosaics, located at the entrance to the basilica, and now the logo of the museum, is that of the peacock surrounded by other birds, the early Christian symbols for pious souls. In the mid-1980s, construction work was getting underway on an underpass, and it was during the initial phase of this that the remains of the basilica were uncovered, though over time funding was scarce, so little work could be done on the finds. In the build-up to Plovdiv becoming the European Capital of Culture in 2019, works were undertaken to conserve and restore the mosaics and basilica floor. Starting in 2014, work was undertaken to carry out a full archaeological excavation and then over the site build a modern museum allowing access to the mosaics. A short distance away, and also uncovered during that 1980s underpass construction scheme, were the remains of a late antiquity Roman house, these days named Domus Eirene, constructed around a similar time to the Great Basilica. It's likely the house was constructed after the siege of Philippopolis by the Goths in 250 and occupies a whole insula or city block, likely built over the ruins of several older houses destroyed during the Goth invasion. The house itself was damaged during Attila the Hun's invasion in the early 440s, but was repaired and expanded only to be abandoned in the 6th century around the same time as the Great Basilica was abandoned. The house is named for the Greek goddess of peace, Eirene, depicted in the central mosaic. A few years after the discovery of the Great Basilica and the Domus Eirene, construction work on a new apartment block stumbled across remains of yet another Byzantine ecclesiastical building, today imaginatively dubbed the Small Basilica. In the grounds of the basilica, some of the original foundations for the late Roman walls of the city were also discovered. Built in the second half of the 5th century, this is a much smaller building than the Bishop's Basilica, at just 20 metres long and 13 metres wide, though, once again, the floor of the basilica is covered with intricate mosaics. At the northern end of the building, a baptistry had been included. With a square plan, the baptistry contained a cruciform baptising pool surrounded by yet more mosaics, in this case depicting deers, pigeons and other Christian symbols. Plovdiv is Bulgaria's second city and located around 83 miles southeast of the capital, Sofia. The small Plovdiv airport, 6 kilometres southeast of the city, has year-round services from Ryanair and Wizz back to London Stansted and Luton respectively. There are also seasonal services to Birmingham, Manchester, Belfast and Antalya. Eurolines coaches, local operator Karat S, run regular services between the railway station in Plovdiv and the central bus and railway station in Sofia, taking around 2.25 hours to make the journey. Plovdiv is on the main railway line between Sofia and Istanbul, and Bulgarian State Railways run services between Plovdiv and Sofia, though the fastest these take around 4 hours. Sofia Central Railway Station in the heart of the city has international trains to Belgrade and Niš in Serbia, Bucharest in Romania, Istanbul in Turkey and Thessaloniki in Greece. Sofia Airport, 10 kilometres northeast of the city centre, is the main international airport for Bulgaria, acting as a gateway to the country, a hub for low-cost carriers Ryanair and Wizz Air, home base for Bulgarian Air, the national flag carrier, and is served by carriers from across Europe and the Middle East.